Hello race fans, welcome to another video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe and ring the bell to make sure you don't miss out on future uploads. We're currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so every little bit of your support helps towards helping me achieve that goal. Today we will be talking about the Cup race at Michigan, and I'm just so happy about the way this race played out, as it had a little bit of everything. Crazy restarts, passing on both the short and long run, some tire wear that played a huge role towards the end, and a nail-biting finish that was decided on fuel mileage. Races like this make me both happy and sad in a way. Happy because fans are finally appreciating Michigan for what it is, probably the fastest track on the schedule right now, even with the reduced horsepower. But also sad because, man, imagine if Auto Club Speedway was still around today. I'm saying this because I feel like the racing would have been pretty similar to what we saw on Sunday at Michigan. Why is that? Well, you could say I'm a bit annoyed that it took Auto Club being torn down for fans to finally open their eyes and realize that Michigan is an awesome track with a lot to offer in its own right. I've always liked to identify myself as a Michigan defender, as it's one of my favorite tracks on the schedule, but better late than never, I suppose. I was also a bit frustrated at NASCAR for kind of glossing over this race and wanting to get it over with quickly so they could pack up and go to Mexico. Even on the broadcast, I don't know about y'all, but I felt like they were rushing through everything, especially towards the end when it came time for post-race interviews. I noticed the Prime broadcast didn't do this race enough justice because there were plenty of interesting storylines that unfolded through it all. Like, to an extent, I get it. You're venturing past the border to hold the race outside of the US for the first time since the 1950s, but on that same token, NASCAR put themselves on this situation by scheduling a race in the state of Michigan and then going about 1,000 miles south to Mexico City, only to then turn around and go back up north again, traveling 1,000 plus more miles to go to Pocono. Like, how does that work logistically in a cost-effective way? You know, all this talk about NASCAR trying to be as cost efficient as possible to the point of reducing horsepower in their own cars, but then they go out and schedule these races at ridiculous distances between each other, giving teams little choice and forcing them to show up with two haulers because there's no way they will be able to go back to North Carolina to prepare for the Mexico race. The preparations for the race in Mexico, they were done on Michigan, with the haulers being sent away on Sunday morning right before that race started. But yeah, I kind of felt the vibe heading into this race was, let's get it over with so we can all head to Mexico. I mean, there was even talk about the race being moved up to 1 p.m. start time due to the threat of rain, even though the chances of raining on Sunday weren't that high. And even then, the race went the distance without any issues. Radar looked good all day long, so there was no need to make any scheduling changes. But again, the fact that this was even considered and entertained as an option come race day is enough evidence for me that NASCAR really didn't care about this race so much in the grand scheme of things. For those of us who cared, however, like I said, great race. Definitely a contender for Race of the Year, in my opinion. Right up there with the Coca-Cola 600 from a few weeks ago. And maybe Coda too, if you want to include a road course. But I think this Michigan race was just a tad bit better, in my opinion. I'm just going to go straight ahead and give it an A- right now. Let's get that out of the way first. I debated on giving this race an A, but there were some things that just held it back. Like I said, Prime rushing through the post-race kind of knocks it down a bit. I don't know if people saw it the way I did, but that's just how I kind of felt. Their post-race wasn't as extensive as it usually was, in my opinion, but they still did a great job regardless. I just been a little nitpicky there. But as far as the on-track action goes, as always, track position was the name of the game. And while at this point you think it is what it is, this is the standard the Gen 7 has set for itself. But for this particular race, I noticed an alarming trend. Now, this has been going on for a while, but it was especially prevalent on this race. I noticed some teams opting to not take a full tank of gas during some of their pit stops in an effort to try and gain track position. Now, I get this is possible in large part due to the fact that the single lock nut makes changing tires all the more faster, to the point that the team can make a 4-tire change faster than they can top off fuel. But still, the fact that track position is so important that teams are willing to risk running out of fuel during the race or have their entire strategy hinged on the cautions coming out at the right time, or in some cases, no cautions coming out at all. And granted, these teams have gotten better at calculating fuel consumption. I mentioned how this race ended on fuel mileage, but what really surprised me was that not that many drivers ran out of gas at the end. But still, these fuel strats are really alarming to me. At least for this race, it added to the entertainment factor because you could actually pass on this track. But imagine if something like this happened at a place where track position was literally everything, like Martinsville, for example. Would I really want to see a race decided on track position because one guy happened to take less fuel than everyone else on their final pit stop? As a matter of fact, didn't we see this happen at Talladega earlier this year, where the race track position was decided on fuel strategy? I don't know, just some food for thought. I like these new fuel strategies, but the fact that teams are willing to do it because you cannot pass with this car to save your life at most racetracks, it's what's really got me upset. If it wasn't for that, I would be geeking out all over it because as a NASCAR fan, I really love savvy strategy calls like that. But onto the storylines that unfolded because this race had plenty of them. Chase Briscoe qualified on the pole for the third straight week, this time setting the fastest lap in the Gen 7 so far at only 195 miles per hour. I say only because especially on this track we have seen speeds of up to 220 miles an hour. Gosh, I miss those high horsepower days. But yeah, Briscoe started from the pole again, scored some stage points in the first stage, and then fell down to mid-pack and never recovered. Just par for the course for this 19 team at this point. They show speed early on, but the moment they lose a bit of track position or get passed for the lead, their entire race falls apart. That's the James Small special for you. Oh, and he also got involved in an accident in stage 2. That probably didn't help either. Chris Buescher, for the first time in a long while, he showed legit race-winning speed, however. He was touted as one of the better long-run cars entering this race, and he proved as such by winning stage 1, which went green the whole way. Now, he did lose some track position due to the several cautions that came out on stage 2, flipping the fuel strategy on its head. But for the final stretch of the race, which again was a 45 to 50 lap run, with most of the front runners saving fuel, Buescher managed to take advantage in the closing laps and finish second in the end. And great day for RFK Racing too, as they put all three of their cars in the top 10, with Buescher second, Ryan Preece 9th, and Brad Keselowski 10th. The RFK guys definitely led the charge for Ford in this race, but a couple other drivers had notable runs for the Blue Oval as well. Zane Smith in 7th and Josh Berry 12th. Josh Berry, he even managed to score some stage points in stage 1 after running in the top 5 in the early portion of the race. Team Penske was extremely disappointing, however. They had their moments, yeah, but in the end I kind of felt they didn't lead the charge for Ford as much as I hoped they would in the speed department. They did show flashes, however. Blaney and Cindric both scored some stage points. Blaney led some laps, and Cindric almost managed to win stage 2 on a strategy call, until William Byron ran him down in the closing laps. But Blaney wrecked out in stage 2, and he finished several laps down in 32nd. A real shame, as I had picked them to win this race. I thought he would continue the momentum going after his Nashville win. And while he was competitive, he did look like a top 5 car, to be fair. So it was not at all that bad. Cindric also had an issue leading the race, and he finished 31st. Joey Logano, on the other hand, a complete no-show in what has historically been one of his best tracks. Even when he had the track position, he just couldn't make it work. The handling of the car was piss poor. It's honestly a miracle he managed to finish on the lead lap, but 22nd place finish in a race where he was running sub 25th for a good chunk of it, not something to write home about. So with a couple of the Fords having issues, this opened the door for Chevrolet to win, and for most of the race, Chevy, they looked to be in control. William Byron took the lead early on from Briscoe after starting 4th, and he went on to lead the most laps in the race. He finished 2nd in stage 1. He was for the most part in control of that stage until Chris Buescher ran him down, but he still finished 2nd. And then he managed to take stage 2 away from Cindric. So it was looking like a great points day for Willie B. Kyle Larson, even though he's not the master of Michigan he was back with his Chip Ganassi days, you can still count on him to show up with speed. He finished 5th after running in the top 10 for most of the race. Chase Elliott also showed some speed, at least when he got the track position. Early on in stage 2, he made a pass for the lead on Ryan Blaney, and he looked to be on cruise control. But then a mini flurry of cautions messed up his strategy. He had to pit under yellow, and he never recovered his track position. He ended up finishing 15th. A bit of a disappointment, but hey, at least the 9 car managed to show some speed and flex their muscles, so it wasn't all that bad. The same cannot be said, however, for Alex Bowman. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but ever since his runner-up finish at Homestead, Bowman has finished outside the top 25 in 6 of the last 8 races. Or should I say 7 of the last 9 now, because once again the 48 team showed up with no speed whatsoever. They qualified 16th, but they quickly dropped like a rock, at one point running outside the top 30. And to make matters worse, during the restart in Stage 2, he got collected in an accident with Cole Coster and Cindric, where he hit the wall head-on with such impact that the race had to be red flagged for about 10 minutes. Now, Bowman was okay, but his playoff hopes had taken another massive hit, both literally and figuratively. He's still above the cut line right now, but only plus 13, when not too long ago he was like plus 50, plus 60. I don't want to sound like a downer, but it's slowly starting to look like a must-win for that 48 gang, especially since we're heading now to a couple of wildcard tracks like Mexico and Atlanta that could tighten the bubble even more with some surprise winners below the bubble. I mean, it could very much happen. We almost saw Carson Hocevar win this one. And while we're on the topic, let's talk about Hocevar, because he was once again in the mix as well, like I said, finding the top 10, top 5, and much later on for the win, as he has been in the last 2 weeks. He was right up there with Byron as well as Denny Hamlin. I don't know how it keeps happening, but it always seems like those 3, Byron, Hamlin, and Hocevar, they find themselves either running 1, 2, 3, or being the 3 fastest guys on the track as of late. Especially for Hocevar, because he found himself in the lead after the final restart when he pulled a mean side draft on Kyle Larson to take the lead from him on the outside of 3 and 4. And as the race slowly devolved into a fuel mileage affair, it looked like a victory for the 77 was in the cards until he got a flat tire with less than 20 to go. I briefly mentioned how tire wear played a factor all throughout the race. Unfortunately, Hocevar was snake bit with a flat left rear tire at the worst possible time. And what could have been a breakout moment for him, winning his first career race at his home track, also becoming the first Michigan-born driver to win at Michigan International Speedway. Instead, he ended with a 29th place finish. Really heartbreaking, especially when you consider that he lost the truck race on a flat left rear tire as well, after some contact he had while battling for the lead with 10 to go, and he never recovered that track position. So in some alternate timeline, it's very possible that Hocevar could have pulled off the weekend sweep, winning both the truck and cup races at his home track. Although, in saying that, I don't know if he would have won the cup race, because you gotta remember, it was a fuel mileage affair, and him leading made him a sitting dog as he had no one to draft off of to save a little bit of fuel. So it's very possible a heartbreak was coming either way for Hocevar in the closing laps, either via flat tire or him running out of fuel. So he may not have won the race, but I'm giving him driver of the day, regardless. That's a nice consolation, especially since now that I think about it, he probably deserved it more than Eric Jones at Nashville last week. So I kind of feel like I owed him one. But yeah, with Hocevar out of contention, the race came down to Byron and Hamlin. Larson was kind of there too, but the moment Hamlin passed him for position, I knew the race was going to be decided between the 24 and the 11, because Larson, he was saving fuel like crazy, but Hamlin was also saving fuel like crazy too when he passed Larson. So I figured after Hamlin passed Larson, that was the moment he won the race, because I knew the 24, he hadn't saved as much fuel. The broadcast, they also did a great job explaining what exactly was going on with their miles per gallon graphic too, which was pretty dope. But yeah, Hamlin did eventually pass Byron for the lead with 5 to go, but in the end it didn't matter because the 24 ran out of fuel with 2 to go, so this was Hamlin's race to lose at this point. And he brought it home to victory lane. First win for JGR at this track since Matt Kenseth in 2015. Also the third win for Hamlin on the season too, tied for most on the year with Larson and Christopher Bell now. And he's doing all this with Chris Gale, by the way. It's honestly unbelievable how competent of a crew chief this guy is looking right now, paired up next to Hamlin. But hey, maybe that's what a crew chief like him, maybe that's what he needed all along. Maybe he needed a veteran established driver instead of a young, inconsistent one like Eric Jones or Ty Gibbs. And speaking of Ty Gibbs, shout out to him too. He managed to finish third when I really thought he was going to run out of gas along with the 24 at the end there, because I thought he got burned a little too much fuel trying to catch up to the leaders there at the end. And Bubba Wallace finished fourth behind him too to make it a 1-3-4 for Toyota at the end there. We could have had a Ford Toyota in the top 10 too with Eric Jones, but he just missed out finishing 11th. But still, great showing for Toyota at the end. Strong finish for them. Still in a way a win that for most of the race looked like it belonged to Chevy. So yeah, exciting race all around. Again, my only real complaint is the post-race coverage. I felt like it was lacking, and clearly it was because, you know, NASCAR was rushing to get this race over with, especially towards the end. I get they were a little bit short on time, and the trip to Mexico was long, and they wanted to give teams and drivers as much time as possible to prepare, but kind of pushing this race off to the side didn't sit right with me. But hey, at least what we saw on the track was solid enough that us fans won't forget about this race when we look back on the season. Again, I know it's kind of early, we're still in the first half of the season, but so far Michigan has looked like a top 3, maybe top 2 race, right up there with COTA and the Coca-Cola 600, so it wasn't all that bad in the end.